Adam Savage here. I love film and I love world building, and both of those are crashing together in the new film Mortal Engines, which features a vision of a future the likes of which you have never seen before. I was lucky enough to go to New Zealand and talk to director Christian Rivers and producer Peter Jackson about just how they brought this vision to life.
So you bought the rights to Mortal Engines like 10 years ago. I'm curious what drew you to the books.
Well, I mean, I heard about the books. I can't remember. Somebody told me that these books were out, and I read them, and I sort of read them not with the point of view of these might be a film. I read them just because I've been told that they were really good books. Yeah. And they are good books, I'm surprised that I hadn't heard of them, which I hadn't done. In fact, a lot of people haven't heard of the books, which is actually surprising because they sort of they're really kind of powerful and they get better and better as the series goes along. But anyway, I read them and I just thought, God, these would be incredible films. I mean, I can't, I don't read every single book I read I don't have a film in my head normally. Yeah. But occasionally you read something and you just think, wow. This would be a really cool film. So I inquired about the film rights, and they were available, which doesn't always happen. From time to time when I inquire about the film rights, I hear that they've been snapped up years ago by somebody. But surprisingly, they were available, and I thought, okay, well, because you're always looking for something that's new, fresh, original, right? And that's what the books sort of felt like to me. They were a world that I hadn't seen before, and the politics that I hadn't seen before. They were characters that I hadn't seen before. So what more do you want, really?
Yeah. And in being, I guess, getting Christian to helm the film, I'm curious about the difference for you between directing and assisting a new director. Because I know you did the same thing with Neil Blomkamp. And I'm wondering if the process felt similar between the two films.
Well, it was not particularly just from the physical point of view, because Neil, even though we helped Neil a little bit with the script writing and later on with post-production, he shot the film in South Africa, and I wasn't sort of there. Oh, right. I saw rushes and would give him the occasional note if I felt that I could be useful, but so that was a bit removed, and so the actual experience of it felt quite different actually. But on the other hand, I was also I was also working on my World War I documentary at the same time, which I've been doing for like 2.5 years. So that was good, I think, from a Christian point of view, because it meant that I was off his back, which was good, and I appreciated that too, because if I'm there and I don't have anything to do, then you just feel like you want to contribute, and I know that could be overwhelming for a new director. So I tried to help where where I thought my help would be appreciated and be useful, but then I would disappear into the cutting room with my own movie and let him do it, which is actually, I think, the thing with any producing job is if you're hiring a director that you believe in, then you should just step back and let that director do what they do, which is what we've done, and just help when it's required or it's asked,
But with something this large, and you have so much experience directing, building new worlds, directing giant movies around them. This is, how do you help Christian navigate the bazillion decisions that have to get made every day? Did you give him some advice at the beginning?
Well, yeah. I mean, I certainly told him. I said that you're just going to get asked questions all day long, But you have to remember with Christian, he's been working in visual effects for years and years. He's won an Academy Award for visual effects on King Kong, directing the animation on King Kong, and then he's done second unit directing. He did a lot of stuff on The Hobbit. He directed the second Hobbit movie. He's got the barrel ride down the river, which was pretty much all Christian shooting that. So, in terms of the actual kind of the technicality and the size and having a big crew and having complex shots to do, I had no concerns at all.
Amazing. The thing that I found really, I got to watch the first 24 minutes, was how much the scale and the physics of the world felt grounded. I mean, as an engineer, that blew me away, because I was really like, how am I going to see a 1.5 mile long building and feel like it's real?
That's exactly what we were grappling with. It's actually surprisingly difficult. I'm glad that you sort of, we responded to it like that, because it is difficult. I found I didn't really expect it to be so, but it's difficult to show the scale of something when it's so huge.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you've got a physical object that you recognize, you know, like, and in this world, because it's set, you know, a few thousand years in the future, we don't have many physical objects that we recognize. It's not like the city can roll past a Starbucks that's sitting on the ground there, and you think, oh my God, that must be it's so huge,
right?
Because there's no real. It's very difficult to get a reference for the actual size of things, because it's so enormous that a person on the city is an ant.
Yeah.
So there's no good thinking, well, I will just show some people, because eventually, you know, in a wide shot, you can't see the people, because the city's like the size of seven or eight football fields. It's like you just can't. So the size was always a difficult thing, but again, it was. I mean, I didn't have a lot to do with the final effect shots. Christian's been supervising all that, and I think he's done a great job. And I think that the physics-wise, it was. I know that one of the things we thought was really important was to show the impact on the ground. So whenever, you know, the city's, you know, a huge city's rolling along, it just is a tire track.
Huge ruts.
Yeah, huge big ruts that are like 50 feet deep. And we had a couple of shots that we deliberately did to show the size. Like one shot, which you would have seen, where it's chasing a small town that goes over the hill, and then it comes through and it plows through the hill. There's occasional. We did a few little shots that like that, which were designed, you know, only to show the size of the scale, really.
Right.
Yeah.
How is it for you? How do you like producing as opposed to directing? Do you find? Are there things that you feel like you can stretch your wings on in producing or directing, or both?
Well, I like producing if it's something that I can help another filmmaker with, and get somebody else's career off the ground, which I haven't done that often, but you know, it's a very good thing to do, because at the end of the day, you know, if you gain, like I've been making films for like 25, 30 years, and so what's the use of all this experience if I can't pass it on to people? You know, it's just. You know, to me, experience is gained with the point of view that it should be passed on if you can to the people, you know, younger people, which not that Christian's that much younger than I am. Well, actually, I'm almost as young as Christian, really. Let's put it that way. But anyway, it's you know, so I do think it's important that, you know, what's the point of me doing all this stuff if I can't actually help other people get their films made? Just, you know, because it's like part of the, you know, the thing with it being so big and technical and complex is that I have done those sorts of films before. Christian's done effects for those films. He's done second unit. So it was just a small gap to fill between what he's done and what I've done, and just to let him know how tired he's going to get, how exhausted he'll be. And on the last day of the shoot, when I went to see him for his final shot, he was barely standing up.
Really?
He said, "You didn't tell me it was going to be this hard." I said, "Well, no. If I told you it was going to be this hard, you wouldn't have done it." So, yeah, I think that was the one thing that caught Christian by surprise. It's not individual shots. He was technically he's great, and he can certainly design scenes and design shots and everything else. I think it was the one thing he hadn't experienced was the marathon nature of a feature film shoot. You know.
I'm remembering those shots from behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings where everyone around you in the screening room is sleeping and you're still making notes on the dailies.
Well, I think that was probably shot just before I fell asleep.
This is a brand new world. The film world hasn't seen the universe you guys created. Does that present special difficulties in working with the studio?
Well, I mean, it presents difficulties for the marketing of the film, certainly, you know, the marketing department, if you like, in the studio, because it's like, you know, it's amazing in the current film industry how much everybody, the whole mechanism of film production and financing and releasing and marketing, advertising, has become has started to focus on franchises, and you come, you know, and obviously there's a lot of original movies of a smaller budget, but there's not that many. I mean, there's obviously certainly some, but there's only a handful of original big budget films per each year, and it's a strange dichotomy in a way, because you know that everybody wants original films, including the studio. They want new films, fresh films, and yet when they have to, you know, deal with a fresh film, you understand that the industry's got so entrenched now in franchises that suddenly you can sense a little bit of fear.
Yeah.
If you like, I mean, fear or uncertainty, I suppose, I mean, every film's got an uncertainty because you don't know whether it's going to be successful or not. But it's, you know, I mean, when you and I were growing up, all we saw was original films, apart from Bond movies.
Yeah.
And the odd Tarzan film.
Right.
You know, it was all original stuff.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it was. But now you realise that the industry's sort of warped itself into this franchise machine. I mean, you're not a franchise, or hopefully next year will be a franchise.
Exactly.
Certainly this year we're not. You know, you realise that the actual the mechanism of film exhibition and film the marketing of the film is geared towards franchises, not original films. So yeah, it's an adjustment.
I really love the look of Hester. I love her. I love her disfigurement. I find it really compelling. I recognize while there's some controversy with people who love the book and think she should be more disfigured. I'll wager that the studio was hoping for less disfigurement. Was that something that you guys really had to get in and tussle about?
Well, I mean, to me, the book is one thing because the book has its descriptions, which certainly the description in the book is more severe than what's in the film. But at the end of the day, a book is something where you read a description of her at the beginning of the book, and you kind of you can forget about it as you read the book. Whereas in a film, you can't forget about it because it's always there. So I think the needs of the film are slightly different to those of the book, and also you have to realise that the disfigurement, her scar, is caused by an attack that she suffers as a 6-year-old girl, and there's no way we wanted a 6-year-old girl to have the degree of attack of violence committed against her that would be required to come anywhere near what the book describes, and so that was also a factor. But it's and so the final balance really with that was that we wanted to do in the film really what happens to Tom, who slowly falls in love with her during the film, is that at the beginning it's all about the scar. You see her and you think, oh my God, it's a scar.
Yeah.
And by the time the film finishes, you don't really notice the scar anymore. Just like Tom,
right?
Tom's cast it aside and he's seen the real Hester. And so we wanted the level of the scar, the physical scar, to be just right to have an impact at the beginning and allow us to sort of almost forget about it as the film goes on.
Yeah. At this point, you and Fran and Philippa have adapted thousands or tens of thousands of pages of fiction to film.
Yes.
Have you guys developed a process by which that is at all more streamlined now than it was the first time you sat down to do it?
No. I mean, it's an interesting question. I was thinking about it as you were asking me, and no, I don't think there's anything streamlined about it. Because every project is different. Even though you're adapting a book, the books are very, very different. Adapting Tolkien was a very different experience to adapting, Philip Reeves' books. Just because they have different requirements. I mean, Tolkien was all about adapting it, but keeping his language and keeping his sense of the world that he wrote. And in actual fact, with Mortal Engines, we actually wanted to change it slightly. We wanted to age it up a bit because the characters, Tom and Hester, in the book are like 15, 16 years old, and we wanted them to be in their 20s. We didn't want to make a YA movie.
Yeah.
We wanted them to be sort of young. We wanted to be a young adult film, not a YA film. I was about to say, but we wanted them to be in their 20s, and and it's also the book's got a slightly, it's written for sort of middle teens, and so we wanted to have it the whole thing to be a bit more sophisticated and aged up a bit. So, which we didn't really do with Tolkien. So it was as if a different process. But basically, you just you read the book, you have meetings, you have a whiteboard and you make notes about the key parts of the book, and you kind of that you want to have, and you sort of work out a structure for characters, and three act structure we normally work with, and so the mechanics of it are similar, but each book is different, so it actually ends up being quite a different experience, even though the underlying mechanics are the same.
In that process of recapitulation, the book your understanding of the book must deepen and change radically over the course of translating it to film.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because Philip wrote Mortal Engines, then he went on to write 3 more continuations. It's not really sequel books; they're it's a big saga, and then he's written 4 prequels.
Oh wow!
And so when he came out to a visit during the shoot, and he he did admit that he wished, having gone through all of that, he wished he could rewrite the first book again. And so all the changes we were making, he was absolutely thrilled with, because it's exactly what he would have done.
Oh, wonderful!
If he could. So it's but that was also the good thing, is that with, I always said with Tolkien, it was like we were treating it like a historical film, because Tolkien wrote so much detail about his world. So it wasn't hard to make it feel real. And in a way, Philip Reeve's world is the same, because we didn't just have access to the first book, even though the film covers the first book. We had access to the 8 books that he's written. So we were able to actually read and get a real understanding of the greater universe that he created. So Mortal Engines just fits into the little piece of it that it fits into. But we had all this other material that he'd already He'd created a fully fleshed out world that's not dissimilar to Tolkien's, really.
How much do you think about telegraphing to the audience, and how much do you think? I mean, watching the first 24 minutes, there's so much that's not explained, and yet it feels like there are rules that are consistent. I'm actually not sure if I have a question there.
Well, with the backstory of I think I know what your question is. Let me help you, Adam.
Thanks, Peter.
The backstory could have been a film unto itself. How do we actually get to this point where the film begins? Yeah. And then you have to think, well, if we have too much exposition, we're just going to bog the film down. And and we had obviously discussions, the usual discussions about having a roller at the beginning. Those conversations happened. Do we explain? And at the end of the day, we just thought, well, there's nothing to really. It doesn't matter if people don't know how we get from today to there. There's little clues. Yeah. And they can always go out and buy the book and find out more from the book itself. But that doesn't really affect the story. All that we really have to worry about is what's actually in the film. And so that in terms of the exposition and explaining the backstory, we did what we needed to for the narrative in the film that we're making, but we didn't want to fill in all the blanks, right? If they weren't actually pertinent to the storyline of the film. We just there was no point. I mean, why not leave people wondering how did this happen, and why are they up on wheels, and why did this? Because you can actually go out and buy those books and get all the answers, or perhaps we'll be fortunate enough to make some more films. And
in any film we watch about modern times too, they're not explaining every last detail about how New York built the subways.
No, exactly.
We're talking about this film as a large budget, $100 million film, but given the scale that I just watched in Hollywood, it would be more like a $200 million film. It strikes me that this movie could have only been made for that price here in New Zealand.
Yep, and Zane Wiener, our producer, who's an American who's worked with us since Rings, he kept saying this is a low budget movie this is a low budget for a tentpole film, and even though it's a lot of money, it's half the amount that you'd really need. So we were just very, very careful, and that's where Christian is superb because of his background storyboarding and previs and everything else. He had stuff, a lot of the expense goes in sort of in kind of wastage, shooting stuff that you don't ultimately need, or designing things, forever, and when you can just do it in a week. And it's all about the payroll and carrying all the labor and the length of time that you shoot it. There's various reasons why films are so expensive, and Christian was very, very good at identifying those and keeping it as tight as he could, and Zane, as producer, was certainly pretty careful to keep the budget under control the whole way through.
Well, at the same time, you've also helped create a city that is a machine for making movies.
Well, you mean here?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not on wheels. That's the trouble. So the weather's bad outside. We can't drive to a sunnier spot in the world. We've just made our little filmmaking world here, piece by piece over the last 25 years. Each film contributes a little piece to it. And
as I was watching the opening, I was thinking about how consistent the world building felt, and I was thinking that's the kind of thing that could only happen here. In LA, a different shop across town would be doing costumes, and while people make fine movies like that, there's a way in which the folks here at Weta have been effectively world building for 20 years and layering story deeply into every object.
Yep. I mean, I think that one of the things, apart from this, as you say, that the great team and the crew that we have, like the people in our little world here, both Weta Workshop, Weta Digi, even the sound effects guys that we are working with on this film are the same ones as on Rings. We all know each other, so we've all got a sort of a shorthand. But what I think the trick with it is, apart from the actual physical building and designing, is you have to treat the world building as something that's real. We approach Tolkien as if it was a historical fact that 7,000 years ago this actually happened. Yeah. It's not a made up story. This happened. So with this film, it was very easy to approach it from the same idea was saying, well, in 3,000 years from now, this is going to actually happen. Yeah. And we're just going to do a historical film sort of in advance, a preview of a historical film. And so you don't. There's no part of it. There's nothing in it that's condescending. Because I remember when I was growing up watching fantasy and science fiction films, and half of them would be talking down to you. Yeah. They'd be saying, well, this was a fantasy film, so we're all going to be a little bit stupid, and all the design will be bright, gaudy, and people's going to be funny because it's not really real. So why should we even try to make it real? And the trick is, you do try to make it real. You try to make it very real. Everything has to feel like it's absolutely, it's authentic, it's happening. And then that goes to the characters in the film, but the characters have to feel like they're living at that moment in the circumstances that you're showing on screen. So if it's a city, chasing a city, and you cut to some of the characters in the film, they've got to absolutely believe that they're on a city traveling at 100 miles an hour chasing, and they have to actually, they have to sell that. So it's partly it's the design, partly it's the way it's shot, partly it's the acting, but overall it's a philosophy behind the whole thing. Make it, it's got to feel real and authentic.
Well, and speaking of that, so when we're kids and we were, went and saw Excalibur and made swords out of slats of wood and pretended.
Some people are still making swords.
Yeah, indeed. And we seek that as children. We seek that feeling of authenticity in our play. And you've built a whole career on building that authenticity for audiences. And I'm wondering how much of it reflects back for you, like when you sit and help make a movie like this or make a movie like Lord of the Rings. Do you spend time in that world, being part of that world in your head, thinking about?
Oh, yes, you have to. You have to be part of the world. Otherwise, you can't be authentic. I mean, if you're making any film at all, you've got to, as I said before, that the actors have to believe that they're on a city traveling at 100 miles. You're expecting the actors to psychologically put themselves into the movie, 100%, and make it really authentic. But you've also got to do it too, from screenwriting to the design and the directing. Everything has to. You've got to absolutely 100% commit to what you're doing. It's not a day job. It's not something that you do from 9 to 5 and then go home and think and think about something else. You go home and all you're thinking about is what you're doing is the film. You think about that all the time, and
you can get lost in it.
Yeah. And I think the more lost you get in it, the better the film is, because if you go down into the rabbit hole of this world of the film, then if the filmmaker goes down there, then they're dragging the audience with them, and which is exactly what you want. Yeah, you want the audience to be experiencing it with the characters and with the filmmaker, not just sitting back and sort of watching these images flicker across the screen. You want people to be dragged into the screen.
Years ago, I made a sculpture that was my idea of what a 19th century dream chronicler would have carried with them as a travel case.
Okay, yeah.
And I made this ancient book, and I kept it as a dream diary. Yeah. And I was working in a theater, and so I had it in the corner of this theater. Yeah. And someone came to me and said, "Hey, someone told me you know about this box. Where did it come from?" And I said, "I made that." And they said, "You made it?" They said, "Because I found it about a week ago, and it's been driving me insane."
Oh, that's fantastic.
He said, "I was reading it, I couldn't make any sense of it."
Oh, you shouldn't have admitted.
It didn't even occur to me. No. But I said, "Shane, you've actually experienced the piece in the most pure form. You got what I wanted out of making this."
Yeah. That he transported back in time.
Indeed. I realized that the only way for me to properly display sculptures like that would be to leave them in people's attics and basements.
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? That if something's old, hundreds of years old or thousands of years old, it has a tick of a sort of an authentic tick, which things that are current and modern don't necessarily do, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, this doesn't
interesting
betray anything about its manufacture.
No.
The worn leather of the case does.
A book with a story. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
every part of it tells a story. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
When I finish something that I find particularly delights me, I bring it home and I put it on my bedside table so I can stare at it for a couple of weeks. Do you have an equivalent at the end of a project this large? Some way in which you kind of get to enjoy it?
No, not me personally. I mean, I don't know what Christian's experience would be, or any other filmmaker, but no, I kind of find that you're so intensely involved in the film, and it changes and morphs as it goes along. You know, it's never the film that you set out to make with the first day of the when you set to write the script. It's by the time the film's finished, it's very different, and normally different in a good way. I mean, because because when you're by yourself in the script writing process, or with Fran and Phil, there's the three of us. We're imagining something, and then what we get at the end of it is we get the input from hundreds of very clever people who then take whatever we've done and actually put their skill into it. And so, and that's a process which is actually the really fun part of filmmaking. That you're imagining what somebody's gun might be like, and then the gun is shown to you for approval. It's like, oh my God, that's so much better than the gun in my head. So it's great to be constantly surprised in that way. That's really the delightful part of it is that part. When the film's finished, it's finished because we've had an intense post-production period. We've looked at the edits, we've looked at the sound mix, we've been to premieres, and which are also stressful, and seen it several times in premieres. And at that point, you really, I generally don't watch my movies after that.
That's what I was wondering. You watch the premieres, though. You watch it at least once or
sure,
because
you want to see it with an audience, even though premieres are often not necessarily a real audience, but even so, But I mean, we had Kate Winslet came down to New Zealand a couple of years ago to visit us, and I hadn't seen Heavenly Creatures since it was made. This was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
She hadn't either. So we both decided that we were brave enough now to sit and see it, and that was actually interesting because I hadn't. It was normally when you're making a movie, and you just every single frame of the film, when the cuts are going to be, what you're cutting to. And after 25 years, I was watching that movie and I'd forgotten.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I knew what the film was, and I knew just obviously the story and everything, but I'd forgotten the actual kind of the cuts and the shots that were coming up. So there'd be a shot, and I wouldn't know what the next shot was going to be. So I'd sort of forgotten some of the minutiae and the detail. She hadn't. She knew everything. I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, yeah, it's good. But to me, it was almost like seeing a film fresh, but obviously not completely because I actually I know a really great a sort of a British mentalist called Darren Brown, and
I love Darren Brown.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Darren once, and I said, look, the worst thing with being a filmmaker is that when you get to the vital part of the filmmaking, which is the last stretch, when you've got to lock off the cut and decide what's in and what's out and everything, it's sort of impossible to do that with any degree of of a sort of an outside eye, because you're just by then you're right. You can't see the wood for the trees. You're deep in the trees at that point, and you're making guesses about what should be how the finished film should be, but you're not really kind of able to view it. And I said to him, could you hypnotize me so that I could look at a cut of a film that I'd made, and I wouldn't know anything about it. I wouldn't know the story. Wouldn't have any, I wouldn't have any memory of being on a set. I wouldn't know what was going to happen. I'd be professional. And he said that he technically could. And I said, oh well, one day I'm going to get you to do it, but I haven't had a chance to do it yet. But Darren, we will try that one day. Well, one of the things that you do in the post production too, which I try and do, is I try to watch the films over and over and over again. Because that's really the only way that I can put any judgment into it. It's not so much Mortal Engines, which was really Christian's film, but with the ones that I'm making is that I try to watch them so many times when they're in rough form that I can start to feel the boring bits. And, and if I've seen something, you know, because at the beginning it's kind of exciting and it's novel and you shot this stuff on set and now you cut it together and it sort of works and, oh, isn't it good? And you sort of get a little bit carried away with the, you know, with how clever you were at that amazing crane shot or this trekking shot, you know. But I just find it's so important to watch stuff during this period between the time that you know, the beginning of the edit to the end of the edit. It's not just cutting, it's actually watching over and over and over and over again. Watching till you're actually sick of it. But what that does is that in the sense that you are still lost in the trees, you certainly can't see the wood for the trees, but you can sense when something's boring. If you've seen something multiple times and it's like, oh God, this bloody scene's coming up now, okay, I'll do this, then that's a little clue as to maybe this scene is a little bit long, as you tighten it up, you know. It's just it's the repetitive watching of it and identifying the boring bits. I mean, that's all you can really do. Well, there's not a lot else you can actually do really to, you know, to get an outside view of it.
In the small amount of design, if I can go back and tell young me something about designing things, I realize that most of the design work that I do is just looking for the high spots. Looking for the things that stand out to me as not fitting into the whole.
Right.
And that's what you're describing, is looking for something that breaks the pace or does not.
Yeah, but you can't even mentally think of it that way. You can't, because you just, I mean, not when you make the film, you can't think of the pace. I mean, I certainly can. I think some filmmakers probably can, for sure, but I'm not really able to. I get a bit lost in it all. So, you know, to me, it's really watching it and starting to judge where the boring bits are. Because if you've seen, you know, anybody can see a film 10 or 20 times, and you know, no matter how good the film is or what the film is, you know, even though you love the film so much that you've seen it 20 times, there's always going to be those little patches where it's like, oh geez, okay, I'm going to sit through this, but then it's going to get really good after that. And so that's what I try and do, is to get sort of that. I try to watch it that many times and so identify those little kind of the dull bits and then chop them out.
I'm curious about your talking about the film changing from the beginning to the end. Yep. Does that process occur both in the script writing and in the filming, and then maybe also in post?
Yep. You're making multiple films. You start with obviously a blank sheet of paper when you're writing, and then you're making one film in the script. You know, the script is essentially a film that you've made in your head, because it's all on paper, but you've had to live the film. And you know, when I work on scripts with Fran and Phil, I'm already starting to see the shots and starting to feel the angles and the pacing. I mean, it doesn't get written in the script, but I can start to imagine the film. And that's one film, and then at that point you have to then cast the movie, and actors come in that you didn't even know that you were going to cast, bring a whole fresh viewpoint to it, and then obviously the designers, the set and the props come in, and the lighting, and you go onto set, and then you'll be set by all the problems of shooting a film, that you're falling behind schedule. You've got to shoot a scene in less shots than you wanted to. You've got, you know, it rains when you didn't want it to rain. You've got to go. And that an actor, normally the actors do better work. So suddenly characters are changing because an actor was so great that you didn't even imagine in the script that they were going to bring this degree of power to it. So you're having to adapt to this. So the process of shooting the film is not really. You've got that film at the end of the script writing that you've sort of, you know, that you think is locked off now. And the studio do too, because they've greenlit the film. But then the shooting of it is a process of it totally changing every single day. Wow! It alters and changes because everybody's contributing, and one day, you know, the scene can completely alter just because of a choice that an actor makes, and you go, wow, that's incredible. Oh yeah, that's really cool. But so you're sort of having to think on your feet and sort of shadow box this kind of changing film the whole time to make sure it still stays on the same general path as it should in terms of the story. And then you come away bruised and battered from the shoot and into the cutting room. So you've now got a film that you know is certainly not the one that you wrote. Right. You know, in its deep detail, but you don't know quite what it actually is because it's all in bits and you haven't cut it yet. Right. So then in the cutting room, you have to forget in some respects you have to forget the one that you wrote,
Right.
Because
it's no longer
gone. That's no longer filming anymore. Well, what you have to do is to look at what you shot and to then pull out the best film you can from what you shot. Obviously, with the script is still there as a guide and the blueprint, and then that film takes shape slowly in the cutting room, and choices that you make can affect the story in the film, and you end up with something that's a sort of that's not really what you set out to make, but it's, in my experience, it's always been better. Yeah. I've never ended up with something that I really felt my heart was not as good as the script. In every single case, it's always been, the surprises have been good. They've been fun. There's been fun surprises, fun discoveries, and the film has become something better for it. So.
The painter Francis Bacon has this thing he said in an interview once, where he said the artist starts with wanting to represent something real, and proceeds down a path to do that, but they never end up with a simulacrum of that. They end up with something just as real that might not have anything to do with the original subject.
Exactly, yeah.
Was there a point? Were there points in shepherding this film with Christian where you were flashed back to young you making films, thinking about your early films?
I always feel like young me. I mean, I still am young me, and I'm not really.
Aren't we all? Yeah.
No, I don't feel any different now than I was when I was young. I mean, every time I go onto a film set, or talk about films, I'm still the same person that made Bad Taste or Meet the Feebles or Brain Dead, and the problems are still the same. I mean, the storylines are different, maybe, and and the content of what you're pointing the camera at's different, obviously, with from film to film, but the problems are still the same. You still got to decide on the lens, on the camera angle. You still got to decide whether it's a tracking shot or a crane shot or a static shot, or if your close-up's going to be here or there. Those decisions that I had to make in Bad Taste and Brain Dead and Meet the Feebles, you still make them now. They haven't changed. Nothing really changes. It's so you still feel, and I always feel. One of the things I said to Christian is I said, when he was feeling the pace, the sort of the marathon, exhaustion levels, as I said, look, the only thing I can suggest when I get into that state, when I feel so tired that my brain almost seizes up, is that you just have to think, are you doing what you want to do? Right. Is this, when you were a kid, could you believe that you're actually on a film set making a film?
Yeah.
No, this is incredible. And then you just jolly yourself up with these sort of mental thoughts.
Yeah. Don't
let the tiredness and everything overwhelm you. Just if you feel it is just sort of slap yourself and say, hang on, you've got the best job in the world. You're doing exactly what you wanted to do when you were a kid. So come on, let's just have some fun. And so I mean that's what I do. It's I don't say it out loud like I am now. It's a mental thing that I do. Yeah. And so sometimes if I'm really tired, I do it several times a day. If towards the end of a shoot, you've just got to keep yourself going in any way you can. And the other thing I do, if I feel mentally exhausted, and what happens when you're mentally exhausted on a film shoot, this is when I'm directing a film, is that you start to worry that you're just shooting TV. That you start out the film all fresh and you're doing these incredible shots and designing, what you think they are, and designing complex camera moves and actors moves, and then towards the end you think, oh well. Close up, wide shot, and you start to think, hang on, am I just shooting TV? So if I start to worry that I am, and my imagination is starting to get tired, I go home and I put a Scorsese film on. I put Goodfellas or Casino, which I've seen both of those, and it's not really because I want to see the films again, which I'm very happy to, but watching an hour of those films just reminds me that I'm a filmmaker. Lift up your game. Don't let tiredness. Just let your imagination go wild, and don't let exhaustion sort of dull it down. And that's what I do. Is Marty's movies kind of give me a boot up the bum when I get tired. And that's a little thing a little personal thing that I've been doing for years and years and years.
Amazing. Peter, thank you so much for talking to me about Mortal Engines. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to watch the rest of it.
Well, you're going to have to pay to see the rest, really.
I will.
You only get 24 minutes for free.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
This actually leads right into where I wanted to start, which was, I was sad when Blade Runner 2049 wasn't successful, because I loved how much Denis tried to make something that was really different and carry something forward. And, you know, we're in this age where everything's a franchise. And you have made a film that's a new look, a new set of characters. The audience isn't familiar with this. You've done world building from scratch. And I'm curious, like, how difficult has that process been to birth like a brand new way of looking at a new world? Well, I know it's a gigantic question.
Big question. Well, first of all, you know, it's I had an amazing team. Like, you know, I mean, this isn't like an auteur vision.
Right.
You know, I mean, I had the support of Peter and Fran and Philippa who have done this before, and obviously this is based on, you know, some books by Philip Reeve, some wonderful stories, and so we are, you know, taking the source material, and then we're having to realize that on screen. I guess the big challenge for us was that the books themselves are very steampunk. You know, there's a lot of very, very overt sort of steampunk descriptions. And when that was realized on screen, it wouldn't be truthful to an actual future. Steampunk's a great alternative reality to us. It's a Jules Verne. You know, it's the future from the Victorian era had it gone in a different sort of technological route. And so we wanted to actually set this in our future. So we wanted to honor some of that steampunk stuff, but then also take it in other areas that sort of represented our cultures, or how our culture would have been reinterpreted if it had gone into the ashes and then people had found, you know, clues and rebuild out of the ruins.
So, I mean, and in this, you're looking at iteration after iteration after iteration, trying to find parts that are cohesive. Is that how that process kind of works?
Yeah, absolutely. And Pete was originally going to direct this, and so he actually got a whole lot of artwork done by Weta Workshop and other designers, you know, almost 8 years ago. So we had this huge, and he just let them kind of go to town. And so coming back to it, we sort of had this huge library of artwork that we could sort of, you know, with the distance of time, sort of sift through and just look at. And he also hired a previs artist, an Italian called Marco Spatoni, who came out with his team, and they did a whole lot of previs based on the books. And so they were starting to explore shot ideas and in actual 3D computer graphics, like working out some of the mechanics of the shots and the machines, and just having a big sort of sandbox play. And so we could come back. I mean, when I came on board, it was literally, I was asked, Pete called me and said, "Do you want to direct this?" And within a week, we were trying to pitch to a studio.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was having to pick up the reins of where everything had been left off. But luckily we had all the source material sitting there, so I could kind of just, you know, grab at the stuff that I knew we liked. And I say we, because, you know, I mean, the design process was very much me and Pete, you know, and involving Fran and just, you know, and working, you know, as a, you know, a tight creative committee.
Right. And you've worked with Pete for 30 years, almost 30 years.
Exactly. So you know, it's not like we're coming at it from completely, you know, different tangents on what we're going to like. We're going to sort of, you know, land in the same ballpark, and then we'll sort of just, you know, nut out the specifics.
As a storyboard artist, you spent so long deeply immersed in I guess the pacing of films and helping Peter realize how these films are going to play out. Was there any of that you had to forget or put into you had to sort of put to the back of your mind to tackle directing a project this large?
If you're a storyboard artist, especially if you're a storyboard artist working with someone like Peter's very clear on, you know, the shots that he wants. And you also, you know, I managed to sort of see over the years where the storyboard is really just a, you know, it's a first idea of out of the head of what the shot should be. And then on the set, you've got to be, you know, flexible. Like I say, go in with the plan, but don't be afraid to change it, you know, because you'll get on set and you'll think of, you know, the set will be slightly different or something, and you'll just come up with a better idea for a shot. Or the actor may have a better idea than you were imagining when months before you're shooting, you're you're sort of projecting what the character's going to do in the scene, and the actor may have a much better idea, or it's more truthful to the character about what they want to do, and then you have to redesign your shot. Your storyboards go out the window. So they're just a first tool for for visualizing, to help clarify for a lot of your crew the kind of storytelling you're going to want to do, and should only use them as such.
Right.
And I only storyboarded about half the film because we ran out of time. And it was just rough. It was just rough ideas about about some of the staging and this, that, and the other. Just so I could keep it open for the cast and be free to use the set.
So you directed Feeder.
Yeah.
And you did second unit on some Lord of the Rings and Pete's Dragon, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
That's a big leap to go to $100 million movie. Did Peter give you any specific advice about helming such a gigantic ship coming from what you'd already done?
No, don't screw it up. No. Look, I mean,
it must have been invaluable to have somebody who had so much experience at your side. I'm just curious about what you learned at this scale.
Well, I mean, I think he was okay with me, putting me forward, because directing second unit on The Hobbit. I mean, some of those second units were huge, and they were working on $100 million movie. So the scale of visual effects and the scale of the sets and the shoot that we were, and the amount of extras and all that, you were sort of already in that. I'd had a bit of experience in that wheelhouse, but that still is there's no real sort of grounding. I mean, you're never ready until you're thrown in. You're thrown into and I was thrown in at the deep end. And I said yes. They asked me, "Do you want to do this?" And I think if I'd thought about it rationally, I would have run for the hills. I would have said no. Look, I feel like I need to take these steps. But I also thought, well, do I want to direct, or do I or not? So I have to say yes, and just go for it. So Pete gives you very practical advice. He tries to give you advice that you can actually just use on the day, rather than a
overarching
high philosophy about it. The nuts and bolts of a shot, like just keep working the shot. You can always keep making it better. He was never sort of looking at my dailies and going, oh, hold on, you need to go back in and get this, or you need to change.
He was letting it be your vision.
He was.
I love the look of your heroine, Hester. Hester.
Yeah.
I love that she has that scar, and I'm curious about the process of figuring out, given the book's description of the character, just how disfigured you wanted to get her.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting sort of point. I think there'll still be debates going on about the choices we've made. We sort of just hope that people will go see the film and understand why we made the decisions that we made.
She's so beautiful and compelling. I mean, it's a wonderful, just watching the first 24 minutes, it's such an intense characterization. And it was sinking into me how much you communicated about the world in that opening. I mean, the amount of storytelling you have to do to catch the audience up to what's going on is, I was exhausted by the end of 24 minutes. And all I wanted was more.
Okay. That's good.
But
it does take a little bit of you have a breather after that 24 minutes. There's a little bit of a, and then we ramp it back up again. So.
You guys filmed this mostly in New Zealand?
All in New Zealand.
All in New Zealand.
All in Wellington.
Oh, wow.
All in Wellington. Because there's no locations we could use.
I see.
So we shot it all at Stone Street Studios. We sort of built over 60 sets. And the rest is visual effects to sort of, because it is a broken landscape. It's not there aren't any places we could have gone and filmed.
Yeah. If you don't want to go here, I'm totally fine with that. But politically, the world is in a difficult place right now. And writing a post-apocalyptic film about class and survival of the fittest, did what's going on with the world sort of inform some of that storytelling as you delved into it?
Yes and no. There's a lot of talk about history in the film.
Yeah.
You know, as Tom is a historian, and there's other things that sort of happen. But we sort of found it was really important in the film that, you know, we could have done a futuristic film where everyone's behaviors are so sort of odd or alien that we don't relate.
Yeah.
You know, that people have. You know, because culture could go there in a couple of thousand years. People could be, you know, the ancient Egyptians would to project how we behave now. They'd be like, whoa, I don't understand how these people. And so we wanted to keep, since it is London, you know, that there are these concentrated behaviors, these patterns of behavior, you know, destructive and otherwise, that human beings have. And some of it reflects us right now. Some of it reflects us, you know, maybe 100 years ago, 200 years ago. I mean, London has this weird mashup of rampant sort of, it has a class system and a rampant sort of forced colonialism, you know, that's ingesting other cultures and making them their own. And so all the artifacts of that, whether it's, you know, people as refugees or people having their cultures taken away from them and being ingested into other societies. That's going on. We certainly weren't. We don't want to make a message film. Because, you know, but we thought it was important that the human behaviors were relatable. As
an engineer who has built many large things that work, I found the physics of what you built in the film, the physics of London, to feel shockingly right.
Okay.
And that blew my mind.
Wow,
How hard was it to make a 1.5 mile long mobile city feel like it was actually there?
Really, I mean, look, very hard, and it's sort of stemmed from the core design of it, which I mean, which was sort of, you know, we sort of thank Nick Keller, one of our lead concept designer for that. Like, you know, really, you know, we worked with him to create something that felt like a real machine, but also a city that sort of, you know, that had all the different levels of shock absorbing right through to the top tier, which sort of feel like they just sort of got a nice gentle sway going on. But look, I mean, it was always. Look, I'm head over heels that you say that, especially with your engineering background, because it was such a fine line of conceit to have the scale, but also have the speed that you want in a chase. Because, you know, we had to, you know, we had to find that balance.
And it was as soon as in that opening the small city sees London barreling towards it, I thought, well, they've got like 20 minutes, right? Given the scales that I'm thinking about here. And then you cut to that close-up of the tank tread, and I was like, oh, this is totally different than I thought. These are weight scales that are beyond anything that I have thought of, and yet it still felt really grounded in reality. That seems like an incredible achievement.
Yeah, well, great. I mean, that's the fun of cinema, and just the sort of the slight bending of the rules that you have to make to have something that big. But keep it exciting with the speed, you know. And we played with, you know, we could have overthought it to the point that, okay, now it's actually real, but it's moving at a scale that just isn't, you know, moving at a speed that isn't exciting. So we had to keep up, you know, and just show that power. We just had to sort of just jump in and go, look, okay, they're going to be moving this fast. And we've just, you know, we've just got to make it work. We're just going to make it work.
I worked on a commercial and with a giant machine that tears apart buildings. This is like 15 years ago. But one of our primary references, I think, was one of your guys' inspirations, which was those giant mining machines with the huge sideways.
Fantastic.
Aren't they the most?
But they move so slow, though.
Oh yeah,
you know, that's the thing. And it's like, okay, we've got to take that and ramp it up. But I think, like, also sort of coming back to the steampunk, like the Victorian, because I think the reason why I feel it works is because we tried to find design philosophies that were truthful in everything. And so we live in a digital era now. So if we were to wipe everything out, there are no statues of how you and me dress.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And especially in the ruins of London, their culture, if you walk around London, most of the statues are from the British, from the height of the British Empire. So they're all Victorian, a lot of people dressed in Victorian sort of outfits. So So if there was an apocalypse that wiped everything out, and they dug up out of the ashes and the ruins these statues and thought, well, this is how they would address. Right. This must mean something, and that was our license to re-include that Victorian sort of character of that the books have. But we had to find that way there, and there was a period where we tried designs that were just a lot more futuristic, and they just didn't feel right. They just didn't feel like the world of Mortal Engines. They felt like, I don't know, something else. So.
I really loved these were side characters, but what looked like nuns with lace faces.
Yeah.
It was one of the weirder things that I noticed in the world, and yet it felt like, oh, there are rules here. And they feel consistent, even though I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
How much did you sort of write into that you do know what they are?
A little bit. I mean, those were actually those characters in particular were actually an idea of one of our costume designers, who just had, because I wanted to sort of empower, all our creative team to say, look. Don't keep coming to us asking me about what I want here. Here's the world. You just explore stuff. Throw stuff. Yeah. Throw stuff in there. If you got ideas, let's hear them. I just want to kind of take all the ideas that are the best ideas that we've got collectively, rather than I don't want you all just to be sitting there waiting for me to feed you with what we should be doing. I just think it's a really healthy way to work. What's the point of hiring these great people if you're not gonna, draw all the good stuff out of them,
right?
And so it was her. I mean, there was just a little. She just had to populate this market town, this trading cluster with all these different cultures, and that was an idea
that felt unique from the London culture as well.
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah. And I definitely wanted that. I wanted like the culture of especially the Saltzhakeners who come on, like they feel like they're out of a different era, as well as a different culture. Right. They're sort of in these sort of peasant-looking clothes, but they're sort of made out of rubbers and silicons, and with these rusted rivets. And then the Londoners are dressed in these vibrant colours, and you've got the police who are sort of this weird mashup of the Bobby with the Victorian police, but they've got riot gear on underneath and futuristic crossbows. And
was there reference material that was a touchstone for you in this that you kept on redounding to, or movies that you found that sort of got your juices flowing to keep on diving in?
No, I mean, never as a reference, because it'll always be derivative. If you look at something as a reference, you want to copy that. But I did. The production design for David Lynch's Dune, as far as just the strange sort of difference of cultures was something that that I thought had been successful. Was successfully done at a production design level.
Yeah. I never thought Baron Harkonnen was fat enough.
No, of course not. No. But I did feel that they all felt like they were different. They were different cultures. I didn't feel like the same designer had kind of created all those different. The Fremen suit felt so different to the Atreides uniforms, which felt so different to the. Not that we didn't look at that as any inspiration,
right?
But,
no, I
but I thought it was successful in that regard. But I also, outside of the live action realm, I love Miyazaki's films and how he can just go to these really big, fantastical, mechanical places.
Yes,
and I sort of wanted to just do that with a live action film.
I wondered about that. I felt like I smelled a little castle in the sky in some of the airships.
Yeah,
it's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, it's mine too. It's so beautiful, and just how daring he is, just throwing you in to a story and a world without any explanation. And the same with George Miller's stuff. Fury Road. Like, I'm going to dump you in this mythology, and I'm not going to explain it to you. You're just going to have to keep up, and you'll be given the requisite clues through the story to fill out what you need to know to follow the story. But we're not going to over-explain anything else.
And Hollywood is really so famous for over-explaining to the audience. Did you run into resistance for that?
A little bit. I mean, there's one line in the film later on where Tom was explaining about when his parents died. You know, he's sort of to Hester. There's a quiet moment between them, and it's really beautiful. But Tom sort of says, "Oh, you know, my parents died, 7 years ago during the big tilt," and that's all he says.
Right.
You know, and you grab onto that stuff and you fill it in, and the universe is infinite. The universe is huge. You know, to over-explain that stuff, I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll end up with a bunch of prequels that over-explain what the big tilt. They have a movie in 15 years called The Big Tilt. No, but it's like, no, just drop these. The audience, they become a participant in your story. Then they grab onto that and go, oh, the Big Tilt. London must have had a mechanical failure and a chunk of London or it must have taken a corner too fast. Who knows? Doesn't matter.
Well, you're also working with the incredible craftspeople, men and women at Weta, Weta and Weta Digital, who, I mean, I feel like might be one of the greatest engines right now of storytellers with everything that they do. I mean, they infuse, every craftsperson at Weta has learned over so many of these amazing films that Peter's made with them and that they've made for other filmmakers to infuse their objects and their sets and their costumes and their stuff with history, with what feels like a long tale. Yeah,
no, I mean, there aren't many places that, you know, I can't think of anywhere, you know, where we have that proximity to each other as well. Like we have, you know, we have the craftspeople at Weta, and also who, you know, some of those are now freelance working, but they're all still working here in Miramar.
Yeah.
And Weta Digital's just around the corner,
and so we have this. Minutes.
We do, you know, we do get the artists at Weta Digital have to create the stuff digitally, talking to the prop makers and talking to the model makers, and also, as I said, it's like empowering those people to bring their best work to the table.
You put the film to bed just a short while ago?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Did you collapse into a heap, or how are you? How is it being at the other end of it?
I collapsed into a heap about a year ago. No, they've been rolling me in. They've been rolling me in to work every day. Well, look, I've had a lot of help. You know, I had a lot. A lot of help from Pete, a lot of help from Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, and you know the whole team. We've sort of, you know, congealed around this film, and yeah. I mean,
Are you already thinking about going back into this if a second film becomes a possibility?
I don't know. I mean, I think we just need to see what, you know, see what happens. Yeah. I mean, I can't, you know, I have trouble looking at the film objectively at all.
Sure.
So it's that time to give it to the audience and say, look, it's yours now. You know, and see how, you know, see whether it finds an audience. It was something new. It's terrifying. You know, you don't know how people are going to respond. You hope people want to go to the cinema to see something new.
Right.
And that's what we've tried to give the world with this film.
I can't wait to watch the rest of this movie.
It goes by pretty fast. It's I wanted to make, you know, I mean, I remember saying this to, you know, I mean, Pete sort of chuckles about, I couldn't have made a 2-hour movie. I just wanted to make a film that hopefully people watch and have such a thrill ride out of that they want to go see it again, you know.
To dive into a totally different reality.
I mean, that sort of, you know, our jobs really is to try and create, you know, new stories and new worlds for audiences.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Hey, no, my pleasure, man. My complete pleasure.